Hi! In the last video we went over all the tools and materials you need to get started creating beaded objects, from where to find these kind of objects, how to select them, to what kind of beads you need, glue, needle, thread, beading mat. We went over everything. So if you haven't done that, and if you are interested in learning how to create fun little stuff like these guys, make sure you go check that out. Now, what happens sometimes, even when you have all of the tools and materials, or you go out and buy them and you get ready and you prepare everything, you get mental blockers that stop you from starting creating, whether it's beaded objects or whether it's any other kind of creative endeavor in fact you may be doing. So today I want to give you 3 tips for eliminating those mental blockers that keep you from starting a beaded objects or another creative endeavor. But before we jump into the 3 tips about eliminating mental blockers, I first want to give you some inspiration. I first want to show you some designs and ideas and patterns you can do. So, kind of like get ideas on how to actually get started before we talk about how to move past getting blocked. Both of those are going to be important. So let's go look at some of these guys up close and give you ideas, and then we're going to talk about moving past those obstacles. Don't go anywhere. This little guy I bought from a flea market. I really love it, to be honest. This was actually the first one I did, so there's a lot of experimentation in here. But let me show you a few things. So I started with a flat back crystal in the middle, and I worked a design around it. So that's one way you can use these other types of beads. Another thing I did that I think I really like is I put these pearls and little, I forget the name of the bead, but these little kind of like hexagonal beads at the over on the edge of the tail to give it a little bit of a different texture and style and just look, and then just designing the rest of the pattern. Talking about patterns, I'm going to show you this little piggy, which is one of my favorite ones. I've called it the immortal because came close to being like broken so many times and it always survived. This is actually something I bought at a dollar store. It was a little coin bank. And what I did was I went to a construction material store, and you can buy these things that are like plasticine. They feel like plasticine, but when you work it, they smell kind of bad. But anyway, you work it, and I put it in that in the little hole that I had here for coins, and when it dries, it's like cement. So it became, and then with a bit of file, I filed it down and I made it into a nice closed even shape, and I actually used it to prop up the tail a little bit because I didn't like the original one. It was kind of like too flat and stubby. But yeah, I really like this little guy. I had a lot of fun playing with patterns here. So this is those dagger beads I showed you earlier with a pearl, so you can make kind of like different designs, fun designs to play with. A lot of blocks here that if you have your beads on a hank, it's really easy. It could be just kind of like fun to just draw those lines without needing to, they're kind of like ready for you. But you will also notice I created this kind of like quite intricate pattern here. And what you need to do here is count beads. I actually made a whole design for this so I could follow it before I started working on it. But this is where your needle and thread comes in. You need to count the beads in each row, like what colors you need, like 3 bronze ones, 1 purple, 3 bronze, 1 purple, 3 bronze, 1 black, etc. So you actually put the design for that row on your thread, and then you glue it. So that's where needle and thread come in really handy. These are the cup chain. I've shown you the crystal cup chain. And I've used this to create different spaces. I actually started with that. I kind of like separated the spaces first by taking that all around, and then I started the design. Okay, this is fun and a little bit different. This was again one of the early ones I made, again from a flea market. It was, it's one of those ancient lamps. It actually had here on top, this opens by the way, here on top it had a little crown type thing, and you would put the your the thread to light it. So it's kind of like it's an oil lamp. So I thought, Aladdin's lamp, how cool. So again, you can see here I played with bigger crystal seed beads that I use for design. I really liked. I accented everywhere with these green flat back Swarovski, and then I used some purple to kind of like create a fun design way of mixing the beads there. Around the handle, I really like this idea too of kind of like, the idea of behind this was to give it that magic feeling of that, the swoosh of, kind of like the magic lamp, and that's where the magic would come from. So yeah, I did have a lot of fun. This is actually made entirely out of beads. So this is bead weaving. I have been bead weaving for many years actually. So using some of my other skills, I guess. So a bigger crystal and just weaving around it and making this little cap so I could close it. And actually, if you look really closely, I don't think the camera can pick it up. No, but in here, on this one, I've used a little bit of that material I was talking about before, the cement type thing because it wasn't even. It was an uneven object, and I wanted to even it out so it would look nice with beads. I've also done this couple of spoons. These are things I bought again from the dollar store, very different styles. But yeah, this one just wanted to show you how I've used pearls and I've used crystals at the end of this to completely use that space and not leave anything blank, and then playing with simple colors here and creating that effect of the lines. And then for this one, very different style, very different design, playing with a lot of colors. I started from the middle. These are those triangle beads that I showed you before. So using different ways to make a circle here and to kind of like point outwards here. So what I wanted to start with a mandala type design in here, and I like the idea you can play with seed beads and mandalas a lot. If you're looking for ideas for design, that's a fun one. And so I kept growing out from that, and then I continued those lines, and you can see how this is a fun thing about beads. These irregular objects, right? Like all objects are regular. So you start with one design, and if you keep it and you spread it out, you end up with different stuff. So at the back, what happened was that first this one, it went in right here because it getting smaller and smaller. Obviously, you lose the original shape with this flower type one, but you still get, a fun shape. And then from there, I continued the design, how it looked over here, which was basically just this flower shape, and I took it up there. And then I decided I wanted to end it and kind of like use the same colors but in different patterns to finish it. And so this is where you can use the different beads. They're really nice for separating sections, for I put some like crystals here so they create different dimensions, right? Because they're very small and very low. So it just plays with the eyes and it creates nice spaces. So yeah, this guy, the little bunny, was a lot of fun to make. This is actually a cheap plastic toy that I got, I don't know, from 50 cents from the flea market. Don't know if you can see it, but it's actually like changing colors. It was just this bunny that had colors, and I just started beading it. I wanted to experiment a lot with different patterns on this one. As you can see, I really like this front. It kind of like reminds me of the Mexican ritual art just because of its colors and the pattern, even though the technique is not, it's very unlike that one. But so another thing I did here was using crystals to accentuate natural elements of the design of the object. So instead of me adding different designs to it, like I did with the spoon, where I broke up the handle into different designs, I use them here to accentuate the natural design of this object, right? And you can see them in the eye. Here in the ears, this was an experiment. These are very tiny, tiny, tiny crystals, like smaller. They don't even have a backing, smaller than those 2mm ones I showed you before. They're very, very small. So I just put glue in the whole ear, and you basically just dump a whole lot of these and switch them around until they they're glued everywhere, and I really like the feel of this, and it just gives it a lot of shine as well. And then this one, I added this little crown. I can't take it off, unfortunately, to show you, but this is, again, bead weaving work. So something that I made out of crystal and beads to give it, because I wanted to make it a queen, a king, I don't know, a royal bunny. That's what we'll call it, a royal bunny. So yeah, real cute. Different style again, but, and there you go, you can see how I've used the triangles here differently. So there's a lot of fun ideas you can do with these. You just play around with them. This is a much larger size object. It's a glass fish. It weighs quite a bit just because the glass weighed a lot. You can see it here, the original material, but then, you know, it's like adding beads to it just makes it real heavy. I want to show you a couple of other ideas using that row of beads I showed you earlier as the kind of like your end bead, right? It's, for some pieces I do this, you don't have to. For some I don't, like for the bunny, a lot of the times you just end with the beads, and that's fine too. They won't fall once they're part of a bigger design. But here I just wanted to, because I was starting from here, I wanted to define the beginning, right, and where the item sits, so I could work up from there. And I had a lot of fun with transitions here more than patterns, right? So it's, I mean, it is a pattern for transitioning colors, right? But I really wanted to play with that kind of like more seamless organic transition when you look at it from here. And then for the fin, I went a little bit different, and I went more strict and kind of like geometric to create a contrast. And I even played with the size, so you can see these black beads are really bigger, right? And it creates this nice kind of wavy shape onto the fin. Whoa, sorry, I just move my entire camera. Okay, we're back. Okay, so that's that. Okay, and final one, this is unicornia that we've seen in the video last week. So you've got like a whole bunch of different levels of making this one. But yeah, I just want to show you, I went a little bit more playful here. I started with like a kite around her leg, and then I went through that idea, played here with those shapes in the change of the blue and the pink. You know, again, separating with these couplings, and giving her, you know, playing with the same idea as the bunny in the ears, but this is a little bit of fear because I decided to leave the face without beads. It just became too fat, you know, too big with beads, and I think the proportions of this pony, this unicorn, are actually better like this. So one nice things about beads too is that it gives you the opportunity to reshape, in a way, objects. So yeah, had a lot of fun with the horn and interchanging these very small pearls and you know, kind of like a final pearl on top, and braids, and I don't know, clouds and everything. So a lot of different stuff you can do with your beads. So now that we've seen different ways you can use the material, different combinations you can create, I mean, honestly, those are just a few of a million ideas. Sky's the limit. This is the great thing about this type of work. You can do anything you can imagine, and it can be totally unique. I want to talk about those pesky blockers that come in, really kind of just mental stuff that play with us. And it's, you know, it's kind of like fear, hesitation, totally normal. We all get them, but we should have techniques to combat them. Tip number one, focus on your technique and not on the overall design. When you have a new object in front of you and you're trying to decide what design to do, obviously you have a lot of options, which can be a good thing, right? Like we said, you can create whatever your heart desires. It can also become a blocker when it becomes too hard to choose. What if I do this combination? What if I try this combination? What if I do gradation? Or what if I do you know, sections? Instead of overthinking the overall design, decide on one thing you want to play with in that section and focus on the technique. And what that means, let me grab one of these guys. What that means is focus on the actual work of placing the beads. Look at your rows, make sure your technique is perfect or improving, that the beads are sitting right next to each other, that your rows are straight and clean and nice, that you don't leave any gaps, that there aren't any empty corners or anything that looks off. The reason for this is if your technique is good, the color combination you're going to find doesn't really matter that much, which isn't to say that there aren't design, better and worse design choices you can make. But the reality is, if your technique looks nice and clean, almost anything you do, even if it's just a block of color, right? Like this leg is just one block of color, or this here will look nice. The nice thing about beads is that they add this different dimension to items, like they naturally create lines. And even if all you're doing is adding one color, and that is a great way to start learning, by the way, just choose one color and do your item, you will create interest with the line of your beads, with the way the beads wrap around that item. So make sure that that technique is impeccable and as good as you can get it, and your end result will look great. Tip number 2, tell yourself this is an experiment. I cannot tell you how many times I come back to this tip. This comes in handy at those moments when you're looking at your piece. Maybe it's not started at all, or maybe it's kind of like half work, and you go, oh my god, and what am I going to do next, and what is going to look nice, and how am I going to finish this, and is this going to look nice? Take a deep breath. Tell yourself, do it with me now, this is an experiment. What that phrase will do is free you from feeling like you have to get it perfect. Free you from feeling like you must get the perfect solution right now, right? The perfect design right now. This truly is an experiment, and you are learning. We're all learning. I am learning. People who've been doing this for years are learning. And the only way to actually do nice and interesting and creative stuff is to do something that you haven't seen before, something that maybe you haven't even thought of about, takes you a little bit out of your comfort zone. You're not sure if it's going to work or not, right? But your mind wants to find safety. This is something our minds always do, right? They're like, danger, 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 don't go, we don't know what's going to happen. Give your mind a break, give yourself a break, and just tell your mind, this is an experiment. We're going to play with this, we're going to try this, we're going to see what happens. I will actually show you this bunny. This is one of my pieces that when people see them, especially in person, so many people gravitate to this little guy. This was a really very big experiment with me, and this was one of the big pieces, one of the first pieces where I said, I'm not going to hold myself. I'm not going to try and imagine everything from the beginning. I'm just going to play with it. And I had to stop so many times from just not working, from not going forward, and tell myself, it's just an experiment, just go with it. I'm not going to tell you which actually, but there are sections in this one I don't like, not because of the technique, going back to that, it's very clean and clear and straight, which I'm very proud of, but because of the color combinations maybe, or because of how something came out. So many people see this and they tell me, I love this bunny, this is my favorite one. So what I'm trying to say is not create stuff you don't like and people will like them anyway, but experiment. And I know actually why this attracts so many people and they like it so much. And so even in that process of saying, just play, this is an experiment, I've learned so much, and you are going to learn so much if you let yourself go with it. Doesn't have to be perfect. Maybe you're not going to like it by the end, and that's fine. Maybe you'll have a piece that's not going to be your favorite one. Okay, you're going to learn something and you're going to apply it to the next one, right? So give yourself that freedom. Tell yourself, this is an experiment. Take a deep breath. Find a design that you think it's going to work, or that you want to play with. Get a color and go with it. Everything's going to turn out perfect in the end. Tip number 3, you can always take the beads off. This may sound like a strange advice, but it actually wraps up the other two. It's probably not something you want to do very often, right? After you put all those hours and hard work on getting your technique right and getting those beads right in that space where you want them. Taking them off is not what you want to do. However, just telling yourself that, right? Just reminding yourself that I can take the beads off if I want to will actually help you move past those blockers and work faster. Because again, you're creating that safety net that your mind looks for to move on with creativity. I can take this off if it doesn't work. So going back to the second tip of this is just an experiment, this is another net beyond that where you tell yourself this is just an experiment and I can take this off if it doesn't work. Free to go play. Go try this. Let's do it. I've definitely taken beads off. You're probably going to need to take sections off, whether it's because you don't like the technique, whether it's because you decide that color wasn't actually what you wanted, or once you see it on the object. And objects, you know, they've got volume and curves and whatever, and once you see it, you might have different ideas about what you want to do there. That's fine. You can always take it off. If the glue hasn't dried completely, it's going to be a little bit easier, but even if it has and it's hard in place, as long as you can find an edge and you just kind of like put your tweezers in there, you can always take it off. So, you know, don't worry about it. Give yourself creative freedom to play. So those are my 3 tips for eliminating those mental blockers that keep you from starting a beaded object or trying out any creative work. Let me recap them real quick. Number 1, focus on the technique, not the overall design. Number 2, tell yourself this is an experiment. And number 3, you can always take the beads off. What are your tips for eliminating mental blockers, or what are your mental blockers that maybe we haven't addressed in this? What is the biggest thing that stops you from creating a new item where you find that you get stuck? Let me know. Let's chat about it down in the comments. I'm sure you all have great tips and advice, and let's eliminate those suckers together because we want to get creative. Thank you for watching. Bye.